Thanks, everybody, for joining Senator Armstrong's official event on permitting reform. Great to see so many folks in the room who are committed to this issue. We have a great program today, so without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my boss, Senator Armstrong.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy has done an incredible job. Her and Miranda have done an incredible job pulling this together. And so thank you all very much for such a nice job. You know, I say often when I'm here in the Senate, I always get the question of, like, what surprises you? And I think the thing that is most shocking to me is how much incredible talent there is that supports the Senate, supports the staff. It's also surprising to me that we can get this little done with this much talent. But I'm here to prove that wrong and to actually get something done on permitting. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. And this conversation on permitting reform is really critical to America's competitive future. We've gotten here today because we are such a country that has always been builders. We've always been out front and getting things built. The tide has turned. We've reached a point where we've consumed our capacity and our available capacity in the business today, and it's time we absolutely, if we want to remain a great country, we have to take on permitting reform. And so this is my single and sole mission in my time in the Senate. And so, you know, the group that's here today is amazing. We've got people from the energy supply side, all forms of energy supply. We have the infrastructure developers. We have manufacturing that's dependent on having affordable energy and abundant energy. We have the construction industry and, importantly, the labor representatives here that actually get the stuff built, and they know front and center how much the permitting problems hold things up, because they're the people that are out in the middle of the field trying to get it built when things get stopped. So fantastic to have such a broad spectrum of energy here. And I would tell you, I think it is one of the most important things about this gathering today is the broad spectrum of industry. When I was on the industry side of this, my argument to people all the time was, you know, we really can't complain about how partisan issues are if we as an industry don't speak with one voice about what we need and we want. And we are finally seeing that, and I think this is the reason. I get the question all the time, like, well, why do you think it's different this time? People have been working on permitting forever. I do think that industry coming together and speaking together is extremely important and is going to make the difference for our country. So I would just say that I think that this is the single bipartisan issue being considered by Congress right now that can add the most value of anything that we're looking at as a country today, and certainly as Congress. And so, you know, this doesn't cost money to get this right. It just adds values, it adds jobs, and it makes our country more and more competitive. So the stakes are really important on this, and the challenge before us is fairly straightforward. But we have got to make sure that as demand for electricity grows, that we aren't constrained, but we have abundance, and making that abundance available so people can depend on it. They know they can grow their business. They know they can make their investments here. And so this is the time that we get this done. It's a very special moment in time. And I want to recognize somebody that has seen this from day one and has been a great leader in our state of Oklahoma. Governor Stitt is with us here today, and he is leading the National Governors Association. He has made permitting reform one of his primary efforts, and it's one of the things that I've been so impressed on, the way he's made Oklahoma a competitive place that attracts business and lets business know that we're here to do business. That's the good news. The bad news is, as a country, we can't be our best if we can't build long-haul, linear infrastructure here in our country, and so we've got to be able to do that. So I would just say hats off to Governor Stitt for making Oklahoma so competitive, but we can't stop there. We've got to make sure that our country is capable as well. I also want to thank both my Senate and House colleagues. Senator Daines just showed up right here. Senator Barrasso, I think, is going to be joining us as well. Senator Lummis, Senator Murkowski, Senator Husted, Senator Pete Welch, and Congressman Balderson. Congressman Collins is here, and my good friend Congressman Miller Meeks is here on the front row with us as well, and as well Congressman Stauber, and many others that have really taken on this permitting issue for years. And I know everybody's about exhausted with trying to get permitting done. This is the time that we're going to get done, and we're going to get there by being both taking this on from both a bipartisan perspective and a bicameral perspective. And I really appreciate the relationships that I've been able to build with House members that have been working so hard to get this done. And so I would just say that seeing the great work that the House has done on permitting, they really have addressed about every critical issue that needs to be addressed. And it's time for the Senate to come together and push this forward. So I just want to say how thankful I am for those folks being here. I also want to recognize our industry panel here today as well. And importantly, as I was mentioning a while ago, how important it is that we have a cross-sector of industry. We have the hydropower business is here today with us, but on our panel today, we have Ray Long from ACOR representing renewables. We have Brandon Ferris from the Steel Manufacturers Association. We have Michael Carr from the solar industry from SEMA, and we have Karen Harbert from the American Gas Association. These are the folks that are out there hearing from their industries how important it is that we get this done. And I think most important is this is a very broad sector. And as I mentioned earlier, this broad sector is what's different about what we're convening today and what we're getting done. So I'll just tell you that we do need, we all know we need more energy, we know we need more manufacturing, we need more critical minerals, and we need more transmission. So this bill, while it's focused on the front end, on NEPA and addressing some of the things that are for the broad industry, we also, you'll see in there, we also have matters to clear more than just linear. We have the mining concerns that are addressed in this bill as well. So this is a very broad-based approach to addressing our permitting system. It is not just about getting pipelines permitted. I want to be super clear on this. This is for any and all kinds of energy, and that's, I think, an approach that we need to really lean on in terms of trying to get infrastructure built for everything. So the bill introduction that we're laying out really does address all the issues. It deals with things like the courts that have vacated certificates. If anybody's ever built anything, had it online, and had a court come out and vacate a lawfully issued certificate, you know how concerning that can be. People always ask me, well, what's the value of getting permitting reform done? It's almost incalculable because of the amount of capital that we are putting on the sidelines today by not having a dependable permitting process that when somebody goes and starts to develop a project, and a lot of times spends hundreds of millions of dollars developing the project, that used to not be that big a deal. In today's world, that is a big question mark in a boardroom. I can tell you front and center that is icing up capital that would be out there investing. So it's hard to calculate because there's so many projects that are never even making it forward because nobody wants to take the risk on. And if they do take the risk on, the returns required for that capital today are enormous. And so this is so critical. I'll just tell you from my own personal perspective, I've taken this role on at the request of Governor Stitt because I really believe that this is incredibly important to our country, to our kids. I always look at my 4-year-old grandson and remember how important it is that I get this solved for his benefit down the road, and so that's a really clear compass. So I would just tell you there's a lot of detail in the bill. This is not a messaging bill. This is not a Me Too on permitting. This is very much a bill that lays out in detail what we need to tackle and how we get it done. And so I would just tell you, your support for this is incredibly important. And so when I was on the outside and being asked to come to the Hill and talk to people, I always thought, that's just Liz's way of getting me to show how important she is and what a great job she's doing. That is not the case after being here. I can tell you how many times I've heard from other senators that, well, we haven't heard the Clean Water Act 401 issue as an issue from anybody else. So your voice, everybody's voice in here about saying that we have got to get permitting right and we've got to push on it is incredibly important. Please don't underestimate the power of your voice pushing on getting permitting reform done these days. So there's a lot of details, as I mentioned, that need to be pushed on, but keeping the pressure on this is incredibly important. So in closing, I would just tell you, we as a country are blessed with the resources. We are blessed to have an economy and a legal system that allows people to invest here. The rest of the world is now depending on us being able to free up our resources and get it to them, as well as take advantage of our resources. And the only thing that is standing in the way of doing that is things as simple as connecting those sources of energy with those sources of demand. And if we don't do that, we'll look back 10 or 15 years from now and wonder how we lost our competitive edge as a country. And so this is not a sexy issue. It's not going to lower gasoline prices tomorrow, but it is an absolutely systemic issue for our country. And so please do your part in raising your voice on how important it is that we get permitting done here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Let's see. Senator Daines, do you have any comments you'd like to offer? Thank you.
Well, now you see what a great addition Senator Armstrong is to the United States Senate. We are so grateful to have you here. Thank you for your service, truly. We share a couple things in common. We both came from the private sector. We're both engineers, and we both have 4-year-old grandsons, I just found out as well. And so he's just been a tremendous asset to the United States Senate with his problem-solving ability and bringing real-world perspective to this body. I just want to share one additional thought, and that is why this is so important. It relates to global competitiveness. I just took my 7th congressional visit to China here about a month ago. In fact, I was in Shanghai and Beijing the week before President Trump was in Beijing with his bilateral meetings with Xi Jinping. He had, of course, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Bessent. He had Ambassador Greer with him. I had 5 U.S. senators, bipartisan, in Shanghai and then Beijing. We had some similar meetings. But just step back for a moment and think about this. 20 years ago, the installed electrical capacity in this country was about parity with China. They grew their capacity by nearly 3 times over the last 20 years. We grew ours by less than 20%. So today, China's installed capacity for electricity is 2.5 times greater than the United States. This is about speed. My takeaway from my last visit is that we've got to go faster. And part of going faster is embracing what Senator Armstrong just talked about in terms of permitting reform. When you're in a race, the fastest wins that race. So I'm grateful for what you are doing here. This is not just only about energy, as the Senator mentioned, it's also about critical minerals. This is absolutely so important to us. Look what the Chinese did last year by stopping magnets and critical minerals, which they control most of critical mineral production for the world. What Senator Armstrong here is doing is making sure that we continue to now catch up by going faster. We're going to have a hard time slowing China down, but we can control the knob on speed, and that's why this permitting reform crusade that Senator Armstrong is leading is so important. It's why I support you, Senator Armstrong, and thank you for your great remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Alan, for hosting this. I knew as soon as you got here and you said this was your only priority, your most important priority, that we were going to get a lot of work on you. out of you on this particular issue. Great to see my friend Troy Balderson here from the House. I'm John Husted. I am the junior senator from Ohio by 2 weeks. Bernie Moreno beat me. But I just want to say this. Permitting reform is affordability. Understand that and understand that perfectly. Permitting reform, being for permitting reform is to be for affordability, about making everything, because energy is an input cost to everything. If you make it harder for people to build things, you make it more expensive for people to build things, that ultimately gets passed on to consumers. And it makes us less competitive, makes things more expensive, and it makes life harder on working families. So anybody who opposes permitting reform is basically saying, I don't care about those families. I don't care whether they pay more for the products and services that they need. And we know, specifically, use this from your own life. Take a simple example. I'll give you a simple one. I was on a website a few weeks ago trying to order something. This particular company made it hard to do so. I am a busy person, so guess what happened? They didn't get my purchase, okay? The more friction you create, the less likely something is to happen. And permitting is friction. Takes time, takes money. And it makes it harder for us to compete, as Senator Daines talked about. So I just leave that, I leave this one thought for you. If you want affordability, then you've got to be for permitting reform. That's how we make life more affordable. That's how we make America more competitive, and we've got to get this done. Thank you very much.
And my good friend, Senator Murkowski, who's been after this permitting issue for a long time. Thanks for joining us.
Senator Armstrong, thank you for your leadership on this. I have said multiple times, we've been talking about permitting reform for ages, generations. People are nodding their heads. We've been talking about it for a long time. And we've all been talking about the priority of it. And many of us have been engaged in different iterations of it. And Alan Armstrong comes into the Senate, and as you have heard, he's like, I am a man on a mission. I got one thing that I want to do, and I have very limited time. And the fact that you all are crowded in this room today is evidence of some of the momentum that I think you, Senator Armstrong, have helped lead, to coalesce, to recognize that so much of this is about timing. I don't think there's anybody out there who questions whether or not we need to do a better job when it comes to permitting, right? We know we need to do it. And I don't care whether you are an oil and gas person, or you are a renewables person, or you are the person who's trying to develop a real estate property. Everybody is recognizing, man, our system slows us down. What is it we need to be doing? And when we talk about, well, we'll get to it later, to the point that was just made by Senator Husted, it's like, well, everything is costing us more. It's slowing us down. So why have we not moved the needle on this? And so we are at that point. I think maybe it's just that sweet spot where folks on both sides of the energy argument, renewables versus fossil, or people that are in the I'm a resource developer, or I want to just make sure that I've got the ability to advance economic opportunities within my region. People are all coming together and saying, hey, I got this problem. And those of us that have been working on the energy side have said, well, welcome to my world. This is what we've been dealing with. But we are at that moment that I think it's time to seize it. We're kind of a poster child in Alaska of being that place where we have a lot of great resource, whether it's critical minerals, whether it's the oil, it's the gas. We've got it all. But our challenge is that every project, every single project, and thus every permit, is challenged. And so when you think about that challenge, the delays, the lawsuits that come to it, that adds to the cost. And so when we're talking about projects within our National Petroleum Reserve, an area that is reserved for oil and gas development, or what we're trying to do with critical minerals in the Ambler area, whose approval has been mandated in federal law for 46 years now, and we still are struggling to get the permits there. We've got a project out in Southwest Alaska, a 10,000-page EIS that was completed back in 2018, and we're still trying to work to get the permits for these mines. This says we got a problem, folks. Well, it's up to us here in the Congress, in the Senate, in the House, on a bipartisan basis to move this needle, to get this done, and thank you for making this kind of magic happen.
Thank you very much. And another person that has been a great encourager since the day I walked in to the Senate and has been a great partner on this is Senator Lummis. So, Senator Lummis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's what a breath of fresh air it is to have Senator Armstrong join us for these 8 months or so, because he's sort of giving us the impetus to get this thing done. As you've heard from multiple people in both parties, permitting reform is something that vexes all of us. And what is so great about having Senator Armstrong really roll up his sleeves and take this on is, as the head of the Williams Company, he has direct boots-on-the-ground experience with all these issues. He knows what permitting does to delays, to costs, to the ability to do things in America that you can do easier elsewhere. And so your expertise, your talents, and what you garnered from all those decades at the Williams Company is things we can all use. Some of us are theorists. We're not practitioners. You're a practitioner. So you know what works and what doesn't work on the ground. And what doesn't work for any of us is 4-volume documents that are so heavy that you have to put them up on a shelf and they make the shelf sag. And they get no further scrutiny because it's just paperwork. It's not real boots on the ground. Let's protect consumers, let's protect the environment, and let's build. We can do all those things, but we can't do them if we pile up paperwork unnecessarily. And I'm just so thrilled you're here and that you took this on, and I am with you. I want to be your wingman, and we all want to help you succeed. Thank you.
And now I'm very excited to introduce Senator Welch here as well. So also somebody that from day one said, wow, this is really important, and I'm glad you're here. And it certainly means a lot to me from somebody coming from the other side of the aisle. So, Senator Welch, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. All right, Alan, thank you. But we're going to keep something on the down low here. I'm a Democrat. I think I'm in the right room. But, you know, Alan, here's why permit reform is so important. We want to be a country that builds things. We have fights and we have battles about climate issues. We have battles about what's the right fuel source. We have battles about where projects should go. But let's have those and get them ended and resolved so that we can make a decision, yes or no, and move on. So what you're seeing, and I am the only Democrat here, I guess, so far, but Alan, we have a lot of Democrats who have been leading, Senator Hickenlooper, Senator Heinrich, Senator Whitehouse. And those of us who have a hope that we can have clean energy as a big part of the mix, as China does, we've got to get transmission lines established. We've got to be able to transmit electricity. And we should be spending our time not just fighting projects, but building projects. And that's what the change has been. And I'll give you a Vermont example that's not in the macro scene of big energy policy. We love our bike paths. And in the town of Shelburne, they want to build a 2-mile bike path. There's a categorical exemption for bike paths under NEPA. But in order to prove you can get the categorical exemption, you've got to go through NEPA. Shoot me. So what, both sides here, if we can share some responsibility for where we're at, but we've got to accept the responsibility to get to where we jointly want to go. And that is to be able to get an answer, yes or no, sooner rather than later at much less expense. It is not about doing an end run around the environment that all of us care about. It's not about doing an end around about what are fair labor standards that all of us care about workers are safe. It's about making the decision sooner rather than later and not using litigation as a tool that can be used by anybody whose interest is separate from a fair consideration of the project at hand. So, Alan, thank you, and I'm really proud to be here with my friends from Wyoming. And the most popular senator here in the United States of America is speaking next. So thank you all very much.
Okay, well, I guess he got introduced. So our whip, Barrasso, who every time I started studying permitting and the history of what all has been, his name is on everything. So don't need to explain to him what we're trying to accomplish, but I really appreciate your support and you being here today.
Well, thank you. And we are so delighted that you pulled this incredible group together and so happy to have you in the United States Senate with a single focus, because a lot of people here aren't focused. You're focused like a laser beam. Most senators are focused kind of like a disco ball, shining all over the place. And focused on permitting, which is the purpose of this. And I agree with Peter. He is actually the most popular Democrat senator in the country, and it's because he speaks common sense as he did right now. We all want to be able to build things faster, better, cheaper, smarter. I have an op-ed in today's Washington Post, stunning that they actually printed it, but what the Hoover Dam shows about energy bills today and how millions of Americans rightly worry about the strained electric grids and the higher energy bills that result from rising demand, yet many projects that would help lower energy costs remain frozen for years by federal reviews before anyone can even break ground. And that's what you're working on, and we're all committed to. You take a look at some of these rules and regulations. What do we know? They're burdensome, they're expensive, and they're time-consuming. And what else do we know? The benefits are theoretical, unproven, and exaggerated. And NEPA fits right into that. Now, Richard Nixon signed it. He was a Republican. And it took on a life of its own. It became a Magna Carta that was used also as a bludgeon. It's supposed to be a little bit of a stick and a carrot. Turned out differently. Finally, the Supreme Court got it right last year. They said NEPA has become a blunt and haphazard tool employed by project opponents. This is the Supreme Court. It's set to try to stop, at least slow down new infrastructure or construction projects. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we want to be able to get things done. And that's why we're here. That's why we're supportive. The New York Times had a story last year, and it talked about the demands for energy that are increasing. All energy. We need it all. And we need these projects built. And the headline was, to get to the amount of energy we need 5 years from now is like adding an entire new California to the grid. Because the data centers, AI, the demands are dramatic. And I'm just so proud to be here with you, standing with you, partnering with you. And we do this in a bipartisan way. When Joe Manchin and I were working together in the Energy Committee, we got a bill through the committee, 15-4. One Democrat voted against it, Bernie Sanders. 3 Republicans voted against it. But we have a great functional program that we can do in a bipartisan way. So thanks for being here, and thanks to all of you for what you're doing for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Congressman Balderson, if you have some words you'd like to say? No? Okay, all right. Congressman Representative Collins, how about you? Yeah. Okay, come on.
I learned a long time ago, you offer a politician a mic, you take it. No, thank you, Senator. Appreciate you having us over here today. I was thinking about what to talk about. First of all, I'm from over in the House. I'm sure y'all know that by now. And I thought it was kind of funny that when we rounded the corner, it's usually quiet over here. But this room was very loud, and people were excited, and you can tell that. I'm chairman of the Water Resource and Environment Subcommittee over on Transportation Infrastructure. I also sit on Natural Resources with Stauber. So I'm responsible for the Clean Water Act. And as many of you know, we sent over the Permit Act this time around, and it was bipartisan. And I don't mind doing that. I enjoy going and talking to anybody. I tell folks all the time, I'll be up for a dog if he'll bark for my policy. And so we did, and we got this over here sent over in a bipartisan fashion. And I think that's important because, as one of the senators was mentioning a few minutes ago, for those of you who don't know me, I'm in the private sector. I've been in trucking for 30-plus years, so I've been beat on, like many of you out there, all my life with regulations and taxes. But I came up here because I felt like that our federal government agencies are just so inefficient and unproductive, and you never get anything done. And I want to leave you with 3 quick stories, and I'll be done, unless the Baptist comes out at me. But I'll tell you, I've had people in my office from different walks of life. Had a power company executive come in, and we were talking, and I was like, man, we got more natural gas under this earth than you can ever get rid of. Why don't you build a generating facility? His first comment was, Mike, I would, but it'll take me over 10 years to get the permits, just to lay the pipeline. And so there's a problem there if you can't get more electricity on the grid because you can't get the permits. Russell McMurray, Georgia DOT, was in my office. He said, Collins, I'm going to tell you something. The average road project takes 10 years. We go 7.5 years fighting permits to get a 2.5-year build-out. That doesn't make common sense. So we're addressing that in the Clean Water Act. We also, my district is very, very rural. And so a lot of small towns. And you probably know what I'm going to say. The water treatment facility plants in many of those small towns is busting at the seams. And when economic growth happens, they can't participate because it'll take them 10 years to get a permit. And so they miss that growth. And so all we did was just take this little old Clean Water Act, didn't change any water regulations, but just sped that up and made sure that the EPA gives you a quicker answer and that lawsuits are settled in a timely basis out there. Senator, it's great. I appreciate you picking this up. This is probably one of the biggest pieces of important legislation that I feel like that is out there right now that we can get across the line and get on the president's desk and let him sign this. You do that, oh man, this place will be humming like a sewing machine once we do that. So thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, Representative Miller Meeks, who's also, like, from the days of industry to today, it's nice to transition a relationship, and she's been a great leader on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, Senator Armstrong, thank you for having a podium that's not built for giants. So it's wonderful to be here with you today, and thank you so much, Senator Armstrong. And let me also say, my mom is from Oklahoma, and so your leadership on permitting reform has been exactly what we need. You came into office with a clear vision, a willingness to work across the aisle and across the Capitol, and the conviction to make permitting reform your core priority. That kind of focus is rare, and I'm an ophthalmologist, so I know all about focus, and it's admirable. We all understand the problem. America is falling further and further behind our adversaries. Heck, we're almost further behind than Europe, and that's saying a lot. We're failing to build in energy, in housing, in the basic infrastructure that powers our economic engine. And this isn't new. This is a long-standing dysfunction that we've simply lacked the political will and momentum to fix. After last Congress's failed attempt, and in the face of renewed and urgent understanding of why it matters, why we must onshore manufacturing, ensure energy security, and revitalize our critical mineral industry, I believe Congress finally has the right leadership to put together a durable, bipartisan, bicameral package. The ingredients are there. Senator Armstrong is proof of that, as well as the amazing work by Chairman Westerman in passing the SPEED Act. When I talk to businesses back home in Iowa or throughout the country, I hear the same thing over and over: certainty. They don't need the government to pick winners. They need to know that the rules won't be thrown out every 4 years. We have to end the normalization of this massive pendulum swings when administrations change. Businesses can't invest, whether that's a domestic business or an international business. They can't plan. They can't build when the ground is always shifting beneath them. Real reform, dual reform, addresses that. And that reform has to address real bottlenecks, judicial review timelines that drag projects for a decade, Clean Water Act permitting that bogs down projects of every kind, and aging and insufficient transmission infrastructure that is holding back an energy revolution that both sides of the aisle say that they want. A permitting system that works should be technology neutral. It should be geared towards getting things built, not towards stopping them, not towards stacking regulatory barrier on top of regulatory barrier. I want to speak for a moment about Iowa because I think it's instructive. Iowa has always been an energy state. I know that you in Oklahoma disagree with that, but Iowa's been an energy state. Smart bipartisan policy has put us ahead. Today, 50% of our energy is renewable. Wind accounts for roughly 60% of Iowa's electricity generation, and our rates are some of the most affordable in the country. We are a net energy exporter. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because we created conditions that allowed investment to flow and projects to get built. What worked for Iowa should work for the entire country. And what we agree to here in this room needs to apply to the entire country, not just in states that move fast, but everywhere. America is blessed with extraordinary abundance of natural resources. We should use them. And here's the thing. When we build here, it is cleaner, it is safer, and there are better labor practices than virtually anywhere. Choosing not to build doesn't protect the environment. It just exports the emissions and the jobs elsewhere. Choosing not to build doesn't lower energy prices. It just maintains them at the current rates. We can maintain strong environmental standards and get things built. Those goals are not in conflict. America's competitiveness depends on our ability to construct the infrastructure of the future, the transmission lines, the pipelines, the manufacturing facilities, the housing. Now, there is an Armstrong that was the first person to walk on the moon, and I think it's going to be another Armstrong that finally gets permitting reform done here in Washington, D.C. Let's make sure we do that. Thank you so much.
All right. Challenge has been set there. Thank you very much, those inspiring words. And Representative Stauber, please.
Senator, thanks for giving me this opportunity. Your legacy can be this permitting reform. I think that you have been laser focused, and for you to assemble this group of people with a common voice in permitting reform is commendable. I'm Representative Pete Stauber. I represent Minnesota's 8th Congressional District. The 8th Congressional District contains the Iron Range, where we've mined iron ore for 146 years that make 80+% of this nation's steel. As that iron ore turned into pellets leaves the Duluth Superior Harbor, it's all blood, sweat, and tears of the Iron Range, the Union Iron Range workers that are sending that taconite downbound to make steel. We also have what we call the biggest copper nickel find in the world, the Duluth Complex. As Senator Murkowski says, there's only one state that has more mineral wealth than Minnesota, and that's Alaska. What an opportunity we have. This is a bipartisan issue, permitting reform for everything. For those of us who live in the northern climates, when you have somebody that's opposing a project and they start in late August, early September, guess what? In Minnesota, you stop that project. And then guess what? The ground freezes. So we have to get into the second construction year, which is time and money for the taxpayers. What an opportunity we have. And I want to bring something up. There might be an elephant in the room. It's called judicial review. Because we've had record, you've seen it, we've had record of decisions, and 3 years later, you're getting sued on that record of decision just before that project is ready to go. Our industries, we have the capability to do this. We have the workers, we have the industry that wants to come here to the United States of America, come here to Minnesota and Oklahoma and Alaska and you name it, to build. But when they look at the permitting timelines and timeframes. Isn't it sad when industry, in particular the mining industry, they have to put into their years process judicial review, they have to put in lawsuit time, 3 to 5 years to 7 years. Are you kidding me? We do it better than anybody. We have the best environmental and labor standards in the world. We can do it. We have to have the political will to do it. And Senator, you have a lot of support, not only in the Senate, but in the House. I sit on the Natural Resources Committee and Transportation and Infrastructure. It's all about permitting. So you are leading a charge. You have a lot of followers behind you, and in this room as well. You have to have the political will to do this. Let's get it done. There's going to be some pushback, but this is going to be for all industries, from housing to building bridges to mining to pipelines to oil and gas to wind and solar to geothermal. What an opportunity the United States has. And Senator, I'm committed. I'm wholeheartedly behind you on this. And we're going to get it done. Before you leave, let's get it done. Thank you very much.
These guys are getting me fired up. Let's go. And finally, the person that's given me this opportunity to take on this fight, Governor Stitt from Oklahoma, who is also the president of the National Governors Association and has just done a fantastic job of being a leader in our country, somebody very principled, and frankly, somebody that I look to think about what really good political leadership looks like. So, Governor Stitt, please.
Thanks so much, Alan. And, man, it's good to be here in Washington, D.C. with all of you guys. And I'll tell you, if any of you were governor and one of your U.S. senators takes a position in the Trump administration and the governor gets to appoint the next U.S. senator, you all of a sudden become the most popular person in your state. People calling my mother, sending their resumes. Anybody I went to elementary school with, they were reaching out to me, telling me that they would gladly serve our state as a U.S. senator. But you know, the one person that did not reach out and petition for that job was Alan Armstrong. And so I've just got to know him, had so much respect for him, and you can see why I appointed him to the United States Senate. And we've been working on this permitting reform for a long time. I also went and met with Leader Thune and said, hey, what do you need? Can we really get this done? Because I have a lot of people that we can put up here in this position. But he said, there's a real chance that if you give me someone that understands permitting, then we can get this across the finish line. And Alan, I'm just so proud of you and the fact that you've had all these famous senators and congressmen and all these folks behind you and the folks in this room and the industry experts. And I like what you said, that you have to get everybody together singing from the same hymnal, right? We've got to all talk about this, whether it's wind, solar, oil, and gas. And I'll just make a couple points. Everybody's done a great job of explaining why we need this. In Oklahoma, everybody thinks we're an oil and gas state. We're so proud of our oil and gas industry because, as we know, we have to have that as a base load for reliable, affordable energy, right? But what you don't know about Oklahoma is we're agnostic to our different sources, and we're actually one of only 4 states that half of our electricity generation, half of it comes from renewables. Only 4 other states can say that. And so we believe when you get government out of the way and you let businesses just go meet the needs of Americans, because Americans don't understand what's happening here. They just want to take their kids to soccer practice and piano lessons and football practice and want affordable energy, want to be able to heat their homes and their businesses. And it's the regulation that's really stymieing our growth. So we need to get this across the finish line. Alan also told me that it takes twice as much money to permit a pipeline as it does to actually build it. That makes no sense. When I'm giving speeches and talk to Oklahomans, and I'm like, if you build your dream home, think about it costing, let's say you save your whole life, you and your spouse, and you're building your $500,000 dream home. That's not big in Washington, D.C., but in Oklahoma, that's a nice house. And it takes you over $500,000 just to get the permit done, and it takes you twice as long to build it, right? That's what's happening. And then on the pendulum swing piece, a couple people have mentioned that. What's the problem with that is these projects take a long, long time. They take 8 years sometimes to do. And then now we have the further problem that a new administration comes into office, and then they're killing that. Think about building your house. You went and you got your home loan, and you hired your builder. You built your dream home. You're installing appliances. It's done. You're ready to move in. But one problem, a new mayor gets elected, and they pull your permit. That's what's happening to industry right now, whether it's wind projects or it's the Keystone Pipeline or whatever it is, from administration to administration. We've got to get government out of the way and let businesses go meet the needs of Americans. We believe in free markets. We believe in the fact that when you invest capital and you build something of value, you should be rewarded. That's what our country's about. We're going to celebrate success. We're going to believe in the American dream in Oklahoma and the United States. So God bless you. Thanks for having me here. So proud of you, Alan Armstrong. You're going to make this thing happen. Thank you.
Okay, now we have a great panel that Chrissy Harbin is going to moderate, and so really excited to see this cross-sector of the industry representing the issues. So Chrissy, if you'll come up and introduce your panel.
Thank you, sir. How about one more round of applause for all the great remarks from our members. I'd like to invite our panelists up, Karen Harbert, Ray Long, Mike Carr, and Brandon Ferris. Excellent. So I'm going to take over this part of the program. We heard really great bicameral and bipartisan support for getting permitting reform done this Congress, and now we're going to hear from industry. I think it's so good to hear for this panelist. I'm going to briefly introduce everybody and then get their thoughts on what they and their members are seeing in the private sector. Together, these panelists represent a full spectrum of American energy and industrial development. We have energy delivery, renewable deployment, industrial materials, manufacturers, and I think together they show that America's ability to compete, build, and lead depends on a permitting system that is faster, more predictable, and capable of supporting large-scale investment. So first, we have Ray Long, who is the president and CEO of ACOR, an organization that's focused on the intersection of finance, policy, and technology. Bray will bring his unique experience in developing projects across the spectrum, and he can talk firsthand about the challenges in navigating the permitting system and the reforms needed to accelerate investment. Next, we have Michael Carr. He is the executive director of the Solar Energy Manufacturers for America. He represents American solar companies working to build domestic supply chains and manufacturing capacity for critical energy technologies. And he brings knowledge on the connection between permitting reform, industrial investments, and supply chain security. We also have Brandon Ferris. He is the EVP with the Steel Manufacturers Association, which represents 70% of the nation's steel producers. And his industry sits at the center of America's manufacturing, energy, and infrastructure economy. Steel, as you know, is a critical input from everything from power plants to transmission lines to pipelines, factories, defense infrastructure. So Brandon has a front row seat to the challenges and opportunities facing American industry. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Karen Harbert, President and CEO of the American Gas Association. Karen leads the organization representing America's natural gas utilities, which serve millions of homes and businesses across the country, and she brings a valuable perspective on energy affordability, reliability, infrastructure development, and the role that modern permitting systems play. So we're going to have a very engaging conversation. I would like to start with Ray. You have spent decades actually permitting projects across multiple sectors, and I'm curious to know, based on that experience, what have you learned about the permitting process, and what common challenges exist regardless of the type of project being built?
Sure. Well, thanks, Chrissy, and I just a huge thank you to Senator Armstrong for convening this today. Is that on?
There we go.
It's on now. Okay, try that again. Thank you, Chrissy, and huge thanks to Senator Armstrong for convening this today and for everybody else who showed up for it. I kind of feel like after listening to the Congress people and the senators that our job here is done on this. Look, the thing that you need to know about me, and Chrissy alluded to this, is I've had the privilege to be at ACOR for about 2.5 years. And before that, I spent about 25 years working for different power companies. And part of my job was permitting power projects all around the country. So a couple things. I've permitted projects on private land. I've permitted on public land. I actually permitted a natural gas project in Queens, New York. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. Queens, New York, a natural gas project. And I've permitted wind projects in coal country in West Virginia across the board. And I think the reason I'm here today is, based on that experience, is really the permitting process at the state and the federal level has been broken, and it's been broken for a long time. So this legislation has been a long time coming, and coming together at the consensus that we have here today has been a long time in coming as well. With respect to the real challenges we've had, you've heard about a lot of them today, but I'll key on to something that Congressman Miller Meeks mentioned before, which is certainty. So certainty has different flavors to it. So part of certainty is that the developer and the community at the end of the day has the certainty that the permits that are issued after a deliberative process are going to hold. So getting to a go or no-go decision on a project within a fixed period of time, in a reasonable period of time, and then for that community, the jobs that are created, the property taxes that are going to be paid, the power that's going to be produced, and all those things that go along with the project, that they happen on a regular schedule. And when you have that kind of certainty around a project, the projects get built on time and on budget. And at the end of the day, that's a very efficient deployment of capital and use of people that's out there. At the end of the day, let's put it in the language that we all talk about today. At the end of the day, if we have that type of a permitting process with certainty, we get to lower energy prices for consumers, and we get to a more reliable and secure system over time. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. I think you underscore a really important point about certainty and predictability, and I'm curious to know Brandon's thoughts about that. I know from our past conversations you've talked a lot about how you've described the current situation as a crisis. So I'm curious to know, since steel producers are among the largest industrial consumers of electricity, how has this become such a pressing issue for you?
Chrissy, first of all, I will say thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Senator Armstrong, for your leadership. There's several of us that have worked on permitting reform for a couple decades in D.C. This feels different. So thank you so much for getting us where we're at right now. So for steel manufacturing, electricity is a top 2 or 3 cost. That's just how we make steel in America. And look at PJM, the largest grid in America. Year over year, Q1, 76% increase in power cost. That's a surge, an amazing surge. We've had one member since 2024, their power production, their costs have surged 70%. It's a small member, they've got 2,000 employees, and they're paying an extra $15 million a year in PJM just to be able to get the same power. And that's if you can get it. PJM, for the first time in history, did not cover their needs at their auction. They were 6 gigawatts below, nearly 6 gigawatts below. There's no greater threat to our economic progress than our broken permitting system. Let me give you a scale. So PJM is going to an emergency auction in September. They need to find around 15 gigawatts of power. Around a gigawatt is going to power nearly 1 million homes. They need to find a gap to power nearly 15 million homes in the nation's largest grid. PJM isn't unique. We're seeing this throughout the rest of the country, but it's so concentrated because it's their nation's largest grid. So this is absolutely a crisis, and we need to solve it yesterday because this is going to impact manufacturing. This is going to impact residential rates. It's going to impact if we're able to run air conditioning on the hottest days. This is absolutely a crisis for everyone in this room and everyone in America.
Mike, I've heard you talk a lot about some of these challenges from the perspective of the solar manufacturing industry. I'm curious for your insights here because the conversation often focuses on deployment, but your members are building factories. So what permitting challenges do companies face when trying to build domestic manufacturing facilities and supply chains in the United States, much like your companies are?
Well, thanks for having us here. Just a quick background on the SEMA Coalition. So the SEMA Coalition came together about 5 years ago with basically just a dissatisfaction of how dependent we were on primarily Chinese manufacturers for solar energy in the United States. And basically, the folks in our group said, there's just no fundamental reason why we can't build it here. So that's why we have this alignment of interest here. And we have demonstrated that in the last few years. Our companies have invested tens of millions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, I should have said, in new manufacturing capacity. And for the first time, really ever, we have scale manufacturing now available for every component in the solar supply chain. And that is a real fundamental change. But to bring that to the next level, we have got to keep expanding at the rate that can keep us in a competitive environment with these Chinese manufacturers, who not only have built up a lot of momentum, they have desire to maintain their market share. And one of the things that they primarily give to entice new manufacturing in their country is cheap electricity and pre-permitted projects. It is very, very easy to build manufacturing in China. Not only is there an ecosystem there, there's a government that is there for you at every step of the way. So what have we seen so far as we try to reshore this important industry? Well, for one thing, most of our new manufacturing facilities have chased cheap, available electricity. It is the fundamental building block of manufacturing in the modern era. Steel, is primarily, now an electricity input. Solar manufacturing is almost entirely electricity. It is essentially quartzite plus electricity equals solar panels. That is what manufacturing looks like. But not only from our perspective, what we ended up seeing a lot of these new factories go to is places that had deindustrialized from China shocks in the past. So they had unused underutilized hookups. We have now, to be frank, taken up a lot of that space. Now we have built factories where there is unused electricity. Now, for the next generation, we're going to have to be developing new electricity. And that actually is a bit of a different optic that we have in the Solar Energy Manufacturers Association, is that we also, our customers that are going to take these solar products here in the United States are going to then use that to turn around and create new opportunities for both manufacturing, data centers, you name it. This is the biggest piece of competitive advantage that we potentially can have into the future. And so the speed with which we can permit these new things, the speed with which we can bring a new electricity to bear is going to be what's going to underpin our reindustrialization across the board. So I think that's why not only the senators here, there have been efforts, Senators Cotton and Senator Cortez Masto, I have to give them a little credit for also being a part of this. It is the time to do this. It is the time to reindustrialize our economy, and I think this is a critical piece forward in that.
Yeah, Mike, let me just key into that for a minute. Let me just throw some numbers out there. Why is this so important now, and why is speed with this so important? So if you look at some of the load forecasts that are out there, the one that we use is Grid Strategies, 166 gigawatts of new power in 4 years. 4 years. That's the equivalent of the peak load of New York City times 15. We've never built that much before, ever. In that, and it can be done. There's enough in the wings right now, projects that have been proposed, so wind, solar, batteries, natural gas, building everything, and transmission, of course. Transmission is critically important. The key thing here is if it's taking an average of 7 years to permit a transmission project, and in some instances 17, 19 years to permit transmission, we're not going to make it. When it takes 5 to 7 years to permit a conventional or a renewable project to get it done, we're not going to make it. So this is a critical piece to getting there, driving costs down, building a reliable system, and as so many people have said, competing against China going forward. So, we've been working on this for 2 years. We just saw a bipartisan group of lawmakers who got up here. And
Bipartisan and bicameral.
There you go. And now we have a very disparate group of folks up here who haven't always agreed on policy over the years, who are all saying, let's get this done as well. Back to you.
Thanks for that point, Ray. Well, whether we're talking about steel, solar manufacturing, or energy production, all these industries ultimately depend on reliable energy delivery, right? So, Karen, I would like to turn things over to you. Everyone's talking about affordability right now, and Americans are increasingly focused on this issue. How does the inability to bring new infrastructure affect costs for households, businesses, and manufacturers?
Well, thank you, and I'm so glad to be on Team Armstrong here. So I should say just what everybody else just said, right? I mean, I don't know what new ground we can break, but I will say, this is no longer an abstract issue. This is a kitchen table issue. And so on the affordability side of things, the best way to lower energy prices right now is permitting reform. The best way to lower prices for the entire economy is permitting reform because, as you said, all of it relies on energy. The other component that I think we need to stress as we make our way around Capitol Hill making the case for this again is the reliability issue. Nobody wakes up and says, I only want to either heat or cool my house 350 days a year, or I just want to run my data center 6 out of 7 days a year. We need it 24/7, 365. We add a new residential customer every minute of every day. I add 60 businesses every day. That requires more infrastructure. I can't do it with what I've got. We're doing the best we can, even through storms like the recent storm, the Snowcrete that we had here in Washington, Winter Storm Fern. We didn't lose a customer. That's because we were really prepared. Can I say that 5 years from now, if we don't expand infrastructure, that will happen? No, I cannot. Not with the type of load growth that we're talking about that we see coming onto the system. The other thing I think we really need to think about, and this should unite all Americans, is the intersection of economic competitiveness and national security. So if you think about economic competitiveness right now, today, the Henry Hub price of natural gas is $3.09. What is it in Europe today? $14. What is it in Asia? $15. At the beginning of the conflict with Iran, it was at $18 in Europe. And all throughout the crisis with Iran, we've been able to maintain natural gas prices at $3. That's an economic comparative advantage. To use Secretary Wright's words, that's our superpower right there. And we need to be able to use it and inoculate our customers. But it's also a national security issue. We talk about winning the race with China, data centers, AI. But we also need to think about we need more infrastructure to export natural gas to our allies all around the world. And we're going to double that export capacity, and we can do more.
Well, I think together you all have a very powerful message, and it's really good to hear from your perspective in industry about the importance of getting this done. I'm going to wrap our program with a lightning round. Closing question for all of us, and Karen, I'm going to start with you. Given that Congress is clearly showing renewed interest in permitting reform, we do have some challenges. The legislative calendar is short and the time is urgent. If you could leave lawmakers with one message today, and why now is the moment to act, and what are the consequences of waiting longer, what advice would you give?
Well, the time is now, because if we don't do it, we're going to lose the race with China. We're going to lose the opportunity to export natural gas to our allies. We're going to lose the opportunity to keep energy affordable, and we're going to raise prices on every single American in this country.
Brandon?
The longer we wait, the worse it gets. National security is at risk. Our ability to turn on our lights at home is at risk. This needs to happen now.
Mike?
I mean, it'll sound like a broken record. I mean, we need a lot more electricity in this country. We need a lot more, and we need to use our existing grid more efficiently, and that means building things. That can mean reconductoring, that can mean a lot of different things. But these things all need to happen faster to maintain our competitiveness. We have established some momentum towards reindustrializing this country, and we cannot let that be averted if we can't expand our electricity infrastructure.
Ray.
I'll be brief. Pens down, pass the bill before the August recess.
Thank you very much, everybody. Greatly appreciate your partnership and continue to work with you on all these issues. So thanks again.